welcome to another video. I am Simply G, and today I'm going to be showing off all of the books, all of the manga and light novels that I got for this month of November. So many books, oh my gosh. No merch or anything this month, no anime, so just lots and lots and lots of books to get through. So rather than spend too long on this intro, I'll just get straight into it, and I hope you guys enjoy. Next up is this special, lovely hardcover edition of Steam Reverie in Amber by Kuroi Mori. This is part art book, part manga, just kind of collection of illustrations. I personally haven't actually read this one. I only got it yesterday, but I have had a flip through, and it's very beautiful. A collection of different art pieces. I know there's also a whole arcana set that is removable, so if you are into tarot, you can actually use the illustrations in this book. See, there's the cards there, and so you have, I think, all the major arcana in there, as well as some extra illustrations, which are pretty cool. This is a release from Seven Seas. It's a little bit of a different one from like just purely manga. Beautiful art style. I'm not that familiar with Kuroi Mori, but when this was licensed, I was like, that sounds like something I would enjoy, which is why I decided to put in a pre-order for it. It is a really lovely book, large trim size. I would say that it's probably, like, if you like this sort of steampunk aesthetic, it's got a very fantastical feel to it. If you're fans of artists like Kaoru Mori, for instance, as well, or series like Drifting Dragons, who is done by Taku Kawahara, I think, off the top of my head. I can't see my volumes from here. So yeah, really appealing to that kind of aesthetic, and really nice to see more publishers branch out into art book style releases. So although I don't have a huge amount to say aside from it, this is a really beautiful book, very vibrant colors. If you're an art book fan, or a fan of this artist, it is worth checking out. We have the complete collected edition of Thermae Romae. This is a huge chunker of a book, which collects all three volumes in, all three English volumes, which I believe were the entire 6 volumes of the Japanese release. This is a comedy series by Mari Yamazaki, previously released by Yen Press as well. This has all like 1,500 pages or whatever it is, collected in one. It's a comedy about a Roman engineer, who continues to, like, I guess isekai. He keeps taking baths after being commissioned to, like, create better baths in ancient Rome. And he keeps ending up in modern day Japan, and through his travels is learning like all the amazing bath technology that the public bath system, the onsen, have in Japan, and utilizing them for his own needs. Too much humor. It's very literally a fish in water series, just about this guy who's trying to make the best baths, and finding himself in Japan through some sheer, I don't know, force of fate. It's a funny series. There's another series that Maki Yamazaki is currently working on. Mari Yamazaki, apologies. Which is Olympo. I can't remember. So, and that one sounds really interesting. I'm a bit of a history nerd. This one is a quite a goofball comedy. It had an anime. It's had a couple adaptations as well as like live action. Obviously very popular. And I'm thinking that maybe this might be a good way to not only become familiar with Yamazaki's work, but also hopefully encourages more of her work to be licensed in the future, because I would like to read some of that too. So next we have Embrace Your Size, My Own Body Positivity by Hara. This was a Pixiv manga collected in one volume. It's a memoir slash edutainment series about, well, the body positivity movement and kind of self-acceptance and how people like this positivity of this movement towards acceptance and positivity towards people who do not fit like the standard beauty standards of a culture. For Hara, this comes from a lifetime of just really negative self-perception, ongoing eating disorders, and just a really bad amount of like self-loathing and hatred for herself. I will say that like if you are wanting to read this but you are particularly sensitive to depictions of eating disorders, most notably crash dieting, the binge purge cycle, and anorexia, bulimia, then be careful or at least be aware, because Hara does discuss that or talk about it quite glibly throughout this manga. For those who don't know, I don't know how you couldn't know, but the body positivity movement is one that is pretty much just about acceptance and normalization and general positivity towards all sorts of body types, namely like fatness, seeing as that does have such a negative perception within all societies. And so for Hara, it's her discovery of this and kind of the normalization of fatness and like non-standard beauty expression that makes her become more comfortable with herself and encourages her to be more positive and more accepting of herself, as well as her contributions to the body positivity movement through just like illustration. This was good. I think I've talked about this previously. But I had ordered this before, like I'd made this decision, but I really find memoir manga to be a one and done. I'm never gonna reread it. I don't think, unless it's like a very prominent creator or a little bit more in depth, I don't really get a lot of value out of these kinds of stories. Not in so far as like body positivity, I just mean in memoir. A lot of, and like edutainment manga, a lot of them are issues that I'm already very aware of. Whether it's this, whether it's like Until I Meet My Husband, whether it's a lot of the memoir manga that we get, which is not a value kind of judgment. It's just I'm not gonna pick this back up. I am full aware of body positivity. Okay, and I don't like I'm of the opinion that like everyone should be happy and comfortable with the way they want to look, whether that's in regards to their weight or otherwise. Body the body positivity movement is a little bit more fraught. It's not inherently a neutral term within Western society, but I do think that because it kind of encompasses a lot of different conflicting groups. But I do think that it's really lovely to read a story about someone who had a very or has a very positive relationship with it, and how much of a positive impact it had on her well-being and mental health and physical health. Um, yeah, I will probably donate this to my library. I think there's a lot of teens who would probably get a lot more value out of this than I do or will. I will say also, like, it's weird reading a memoir manga that talks so much about like pop culture, and obviously like depictions of fatness, most notably in media. So it's weird that, like, to see, manga Zac Efron when she's talking about Hairspray, or, Queer Eye, like the Fab Five in manga, or, yeah, it's just, or Lizzo as well. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's manga Lizzo. Which was just like a fun little, I was like, oh, okay. I do think it's good, as I said, it's nice to have some, like, positive depictions, and like a memoir about unobtainable beauty standards, and also like how it can really affect the mental health of people, and then well, especially young women. So, it's not one for me. I don't feel bad that I read it or anything, but I, going forward, will really stick to memoir being digital only releases for me, or library, releases. I don't need to own these. I don't need to own this, so I will be probably sending that. Well, no, I will be sending this to my local library because, yeah, it's good, but it's not one that I need in my collection, but it is worth reading, if you so choose. Just as I said, keep in mind those kind of trigger warnings, and frank, just like the depiction of just very fraught eating disorders. So yeah. Into the new print debuts for the month, we have Volume 1 of Blue Box by Koji Miura. This is an ongoing sports romance series from Shonen Jump. It's one that I haven't read for a while. I was following it on the Shonen Jump manga app, and initially, and this volume is a good encapsulation of that. I do think that it balances the romance and the sports aspect very well. It was a nice change of pace for kind of the current type of series that is in Shonen Jump. But as it's continued to go on, it's fallen more and more into tropes. Not in this volume, but like in the subsequent chapters. So it's not one that I will probably continue buying in print. Again, this is one that I just had already pre-ordered, and because I pre-order from a small comic shop, I don't like to cancel pre-orders if I can help it. So this one probably will go to the library as well. I do think it has a really strong opening. So this is the story of a badminton player who has a big crush on this girl at his high school. She's a star basketball player, and through sheer happenstance and coincidence, she ends up living at his home, um, after her parents move for work. Um, so she's staying with him. So he's living in, obviously he's living in his house with the girl that he really likes. And not only does he, have this big crush on her, but he really respects her as a athlete. She's very good at what she does, and she's kind of seen as the MVP on the girls' basketball team. Whereas our main character, he's kind of really up and coming, but very hardworking. He's really aiming to improve and wanting to do better. As I said, I do really think that, especially early on, the series balances the sports and bubbling, slow burn romance stuff really well. I think the art style is pretty enough to kind of capture the feel of that first love and, will they, won't they, but also a really good amount of fluidity to capture the action in regards to the sports stuff. It's a solid series. I'm not going to say it's the best one on Jump, and I'm not up to date. I know that a lot of people have kind of really gotten frustrated with it because it keeps incorporating more and more tropes of romantic comedies or high school romance series. The love rivals on both sides, miscommunication, etc. So I haven't caught up, and this isn't one that I can see myself continuing in print. But it is nice that we've gotten a little bit of a different type of series from Jump, especially as right now there are so many series focused on action and then also comedy. We've got a lot of gag manga in Jump right now. So it's a nice change of pace, if nothing else. And if it sounds like your thing, if you're wanting another sports series, if you like that balance of romance and non-action adventure action sports manga, that does take the sport pretty seriously on both sides, then maybe give it a shot. I don't know, I can't speak to how people enjoy reading things, but I do think that if you are wanting to try it on the Shonen Jump app. Don't inherently rush out to buy this, even though I do think that this is a solid first volume, and it sets the tone pretty well for what the series is and is trying to be. Have Volume 1 of Usotoki Rhetoric by Ritsu Miyako. This is a new release from One Piece Books. It is a historical mystery manga about a girl who can hear lies. She can tell when people are lying because their words have a metallic tone to them, which has caused her a lot of grief. It basically ran her out of her hometown because nobody liked her. And so she's come to the big city to reinvent herself. And she's not very good at hiding that she has this ability. But through a series of events, she ultimately gets found she gets found by two men. One who is a professional, who's a detective. And although he's a very good detective, he's very observant and has great deduction ability. He doesn't have a lot of work, so he's always struggling for money. And then his best friend, who's I believe with the police, I don't really remember. This is set in the first year of Showa, so 1926, roughly 100 years ago. So if you like kind of modern historical setting, this is absolutely pretty fun time. I think it's as someone who is a mystery fan and detective mystery fan, this was fun. I know it's only 10 volumes, which I'm interested to see how it continues. It's sweet, it's fun, it's got a lot more like comedy beats than, well, I don't really know what I expected for this one, but it's good, it's decent, and I look forward to reading more. It's got that good balance of, um, yeah, that mystery element and then kind of day to day life. Um, Comedy stylings maybe between our two characters. Um, I do I will be looking out for Kaneko's, our main character, her development as a character, because right now she doesn't have a lot of self confidence. She's kind of really attached herself to this detective because he's the first person who's ever like accepted her for her ability or for who she is and not been afraid of her ability or creeped out by it, which is, as someone who can tell when people are lying, the fact that he isn't, and he's very excited to know her and to work with her, is a big deal. I presume maybe there might be romance in this. I don't know. I didn't. It's been a while since I looked this up. This is also a weird one because for me personally, because back way back prior to this being announced, I found the listing for this first volume on Book Depository's pre-orders. It's not the first time I've like discovered a license before it's been announced thanks to pre-orders, between this and Descending Stories and something else as well. I always feel weird when I'm in this position of like, oh, I guess I'm just looking so far ahead in the future on Book Depository that publishers, it's not as important for them to be, they just haven't even announced anything yet. So I was a little bit of the whistleblower on this one, because I did post about it on Twitter, thinking that maybe like it had been announced and I just had missed it. But no, it hadn't been announced yet. So yeah, it was a fun little read, and I look forward to continuing to see where this series goes. We have volume 1 of Last Gender, When We Are Nameless, by Rei Taki. This is I think it's ongoing. It might be complete in like 2 or 3 volumes. It's a series about a sex club, and its various patrons and the various gender and sexuality identities that they have, and it shows a very wide range of people, gender expression. It's quite explicit, like it is a sex club, and this is not a censored release, so there's a lot of sex, a lot of boobs, namely as well. So yeah, it's a little bit of I don't want to say it's an anthology, but vignettes from different patrons. The first chapter is about a woman who goes there after discovering her husband had the business card or had a membership or something to this club, and her kind of confronting her own prejudices, but also her own self-imposed, her own self-imposed sense of self, never being comfortable with exploring her sexuality. I think it's somewhat implied that she is not heterosexual. She's married, but she did it because that's what's expected of women. We also have a pansexual character who shows up in a couple. Well, the main, like, the first recurring character is a bisexual trans woman who, again, like, is chatting to this woman who comes after finding her husband's card. Um, and so, yeah, there's a bit of interaction between them, and then the next vignette is about this bisexual trans woman and her continually, her ongoing search for love and acceptance, and also just being completely unapologetic about who she is, which honestly, babe, love you. But then, like, her trepidation towards this guy who also is kind of a familiar face in this club, who is a pansexual, which she doesn't realize necessarily at first. So she's very hesitant to progress their relationship, but all things work out in the end. We also have I would say probably gender non-conforming heterosexual man who's older. He really well, I believe it's been a little while since I read this. Apologies. Um, I don't think he's X gender, but I do think that the discussion is about gender fluidity, because when this character is at home, perfect husband, and older. He's probably in his late 40s, early 50s. Um, and but when he's at this club, he becomes Maria. He dresses up in like very Lolita fashion, blonde, curly, curl wig, all of that, and is feels comfortable in doing that, but has this conflict of hiding this aspect of himself from his wife. It's I think it's really lovely to see that kind of discussion of gender and gender expression, not inherently tied to like sexuality either. But I think he's very well, you know, gender fluidity then obviously doesn't make you heterosexual, but I don't think he's attracted to like men. I think he's quite happy with his wife and loves her dearly. But that discussion of like what happens when you do become more comfortable with yourself or have these later life realizations about yourself, and you're already in a relationship, that fear of rejection from your partner, from family, kids especially. I think it just handled really lovely. And then the last chapter in this particular book is about another, frequent visitor of this club, who is a sex positive, aromantic young woman. Um, she's mainly, like, I would say, I can't remember if it says she's asexual. She just doesn't, she's aromantic, so she doesn't fall in love, have those like romantic feelings towards people, but she's loves sex, or like she has sex all of the time. Which is why she comes to this club to hook up with people, without that expectation of a relationship, which I think is again really interesting to see, because obviously, like, within the discussion of queer communities in Western society and in wider society, asexuality and aromantics are really sidelined at the best of times anyway. But especially, like, we have seen more and more depictions of asexuality and like non-binary or ex-gender people within manga recently. For example, within Our Dreams at Dusk, within X-Gender, within I Want to Be a Wall. Those all have elements of that. But I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is the first time we've seen like an aromantic character, which is, again, as said, somebody who doesn't feel romantic love or doesn't seek romantic love. So even within like LGBT manga, it is different. This series is gender AF, which makes sense because gender is literally in the title. Although, as I said, it does discuss like sexuality as well. It's a very broad queer series or vignettes. It's interesting. It's a good one to add to your LGBT collection if you are so interested. But as noted, it is very explicit. I'll see if I can find a something that's not that explicit. Yeah, it's nice. It's good. Yeah, if it sounds like your thing, definitely pick it up. Finally, for one-shots, we have the new edition of Canis Dear Mr. Rain by Zach. I owned the previous release from Kuma as well, but this has an extra story or something in it. I can't really remember. Bonus chapter. This is a romance, slow burn romance between a milliner, like a hat maker, and a guy he just picks up on the street who has a bit of a shady past. It's really good. The last volume of this couple story was just released, also by Kuma. That was Canis, Dear Mr. Hatter? Something like that, I can't remember. So their story is kind of wrapped up within 3 volumes. It does have a continuation though, which it focuses on other characters within this universe, which I am very excited to get into. This is really good. It's probably my favorite release from Kuma, just generally, like story-wise. I would highly recommend it. And if you're wanting to support more BL and I don't want to say smaller publisher because Kuma is owned by Faku, but if you do like high quality comic releases, Faku is very good at that. So if you are wanting to get some real bang for your buck, then Kuma releases are very, very nice. BL debuts, we have the first volume of the Sasaki and Miyano spin-off, which is Hirano and Kagiura, also by Sho Harusono, obviously. I haven't actually given this one a read, but this is the side couple from Sasaki and Miyano. They are roommates. One is a basketball player who is just utterly in love with his roommate, who I believe is on the student council. I can't quite remember. As I said, I haven't read this one, but obviously these two were popular enough. They had enough interest from the main series that they got not only their own manga spin-off, there's an upcoming light novel as well, which has been licensed and will be released from Yen Press too. It's just, I really like Sasaki and Miyano, so this was a no-brainer. I just like Sho Harusono's work. It's very soft and sweet and lovely. So this, yeah, I as soon as it went on pre-orders, I was like, I must get that. And thus I have, but I only received it yesterday, so I haven't had the chance to read it. Very, very lovely, and super sweet. Check out the Sasaki and Miyano anime as well, if you haven't. Nice to see more BL series get, like, lovely, proper adaptations, both live action and anime as well. So yeah, check it out. So we have Anti-Romance from Shoko Hidaka. This is a 2-volume series. This is a special edition from Seven Seas, which means it has a color gallery in the back. But this is the story of two childhood friends who are roommates. They've lived together for 6 years. 6 years? Yeah. Since high school graduation. And both of them are harboring secret feelings for the other, but they've been friends for so long and they've lived together so long that they don't really know how. Well, they don't really want to rock the boat. They don't want to change the status quo because they are too afraid of losing a person that's very important to them if they act on their feelings. But by the end of this volume, that boundary has been breached, and then now they are trying to coordinate what that means. I really like Shoko Hidaka's stuff. Unfortunately, we never got the rest of Does the Flower Bloom from June because they're June. But I did enjoy that series when I was reading it, although I never finished it, obviously. This is also really lovely. Also a little bit more my speed because I am a sucker for childhood friends to lover stories. We know this. It's really good. Very, very good tension. Although, a little bit frustrating considering, how little these two communicate with each other. There's an ongoing conversation that they have about they can never really tell what the other person is thinking. And I'm like, that's because you guys don't tell each other anything. Which they're also blatantly aware of, which is good. Yeah, well worth the read if you are looking for a new BL to get into, especially one that isn't related to any other existing series that we have. Check this one out. So on to completed works, the first being Prince Bari. This is a BL Korean comic from Net Comics by Solanine and Maki as the artist. This is obviously a 6-volume series about a con man who is a professional quote-unquote psychic, but in reality he doesn't have any psychic powers or spiritual powers. He presents himself as a fortune teller and he gives people their fortunes, but in reality he can only see one ghost who has attached himself to our main character and has been his companion throughout his life. But one day a CEO of a large tech company comes in for some advice, spiritual advice, I guess, or fortune telling, because he also has a ghost attached to him, and the as we find out, these ghosts may know each other. So, yeah, it's a quirky little, a little bit longer series about two men, the two ghosts who are attached to them, and the relationship between all four. It's good. I enjoy this. This is probably the longest series from Net Comics that I own. It was also one of the first Korean web comics, sort of, that I've followed for a long time. I discovered it through these print volumes, but there was a huge gap between the first 2 or 3 and the 4th volume, and then another huge gap, which I'm sure was exacerbated by COVID, between that and these last 2 volumes. I kind of assumed that it had been dropped, because I don't know if Net Comics does any print releases anymore. They're certainly not in the position that they were in like 5, 10 years ago. So I don't know. Maybe that's conjecture on my part, but yeah, this is a sweet little romance series with a ghostly couple and a not so ghostly couple. Also, these books and the main story is like not explicit at all. So this is very, PG friendly for whomever wants to read it. It does have spicy side stories, which I believe, well, for right now, are digital only. You can purchase or subscribe or whatever via Netcomics' platform and read them there. I think they're also available on like Kindle or something. I don't remember. So if you're wanting, some more adult situations, then those are available too. They're just not in the print editions. And I don't know whether they will make like a collected, like side story book. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. We'll find out in another 5 years. But yeah, Prince Barry is very very good, and yeah, I recommend it if it sounds like your thing. Is Jealousy, Volume 5 by Scarlett Berico. This, oh my gosh, the series is so good, and I never expected to like it as much as I ended up enjoying it. So this is kind of a spin-off, prequel, sequel to a different Scarlett Berico single volume, wherein Akitora, the main character of this series, was like the villain, kind of. Well, not kind of. He was sort of definitely the villain of that particular book and couple. But this is the this is about a kind of, I don't want to say twisted, but it's about a twisted relationship between two men who kind of went their separate ways after a lot of stuff. But they kind of, it's so good. Like how to encapsulate this story. This is a story of an older man who in his youth was very like, he doesn't really have a kind of sense of danger or death. He's just rather doing whatever he wants. He's very promiscuous, and just because of that, kind of finds himself doing whatever he can, just to get by. And he falls head over heels in love with the young son of a Yakuza member. No, I say young son, but like they're similar age. Who is also married with a young child. So there's that whole messy situation. But he's just completely dedicated to this guy. He really wants to, help him out with his work. And so he ends up in kind of this weird little polycule of a family, with this Yakuza heir, I should say, and his wife and kid, and then like some of the other Yakuza members, high-ranking members, and ultimately, like, they go their separate ways because they realize that their relationship isn't really toxic, but they're not necessarily good for each other then. And then by the end of the story, it's been many, many years later, at least 2 decades, and so, and then they reconnect. But like, so when I went into this series, I first of all didn't know if I could enjoy a series where the main character was like just this such despicable person from that previous book. And I don't remember the name of it. Fourth Generation's Head is the like subtitle to it. I never remember because it's the guy's name and I never remember his name. But Scarlett Barico is so good at writing like imperfect characters that despite like being bad people or making bad choices or like getting into trouble and making their own drama, that are so, I don't want to say relatable because I don't think he is relatable, but I think you can see and like really care about that character. Like she wrote about it in the author's note of this particular book about her appeal of writing and drawing characters that although they're hard to love, you love them anyway, or you care about them anyway. And she's so good at that. Yeah, oh my gosh, this is a really, really good series. And I went into it because, one, I do like Scarlett Barico. I thought the premise was interesting. And although I wasn't, like, super keen on reading this story, I was like, well, I'll read it for like the drama because there's a lot of messy, obviously, like when you're having a relationship with someone who's, you know, married and with a kid, I was expecting way more mess in regards to that. There was plenty of that, but this was a much kinder look at this dynamic than what I was expecting. And although these characters are like ostensibly bad people, they are Yakuza members, and like there's a lot of violence and like, you know, attempted murder and all of these things as well happening in this story. It's like there's this element of finding family and then that ties into like the idea of Yakuza family. It's really like, it's just really well done. I don't know, it's just really, really well done. And as I said, I can't believe that by the end of it I have fallen in love with this series so much. You did it, Scarlett Barico, the master that you are. I should never have had my doubts. But it's really, really good if you can, you know, handle kind of a darker Yakuza story. I wouldn't say it's like as dark as something like Twittering Birds Never Fly or even some of the other Yakuza series we've gotten over the last decade or so, but it doesn't shy away from violence. It doesn't shy away from like really difficult, messy situations, and of course it does have that cheating aspect. Although I like, again, is it cheating when, well, it is, but like there's a point wherein the wife like she, throughout most of it, she does know that her husband's having this relationship, and she's not okay with it, but she's also like not as hurt by it as you would expect. Like, again, these are some very interesting characters, very strong personalities across the board. But yeah, I really recommend this one if you are a fan of Scarlett Barico, if you're a fan of like messier, darker dramas, and if you're a fan of reconnection. So yeah, it was a good time. Next, we have an ongoing manga. We have the 12th deluxe edition of Berserk. Once again, Berserk really doesn't need any introduction. This collects 34 to 36, so those 3 volumes, and means that we're slowly closing the gap between these deluxe editions and the singles. I know volume 41 was also just released from Dark Horse, and knowing the kind of irregular schedule of Berserk, and obviously the large break that Studio Gaga took after the untimely death of Kentaro Miura, that we probably won't be seeing volume 42 anytime soon. But if we do, then that would subsequently be the volume 14 of these editions. So yeah, we are very, very close to catching up. Yeah, as said before, I'm a newer fan of Berserk. Obviously, I've been very aware of it, and it's something that's just in the collective consciousness and has been for decades. Hugely influential, but wrought with ongoing hiatuses due to Miura's health, which unfortunately kind of has resulted in him dying before being able to complete this story. As mentioned, though, Studio Gaga, his team of assistants, is continuing the story, presumably on, outlines that Miura had written, which, and will also be headed by one of his very close friends, who will be, I guess, the main... I don't know how to phrase this. There's a team of people who will continue Berserk after volume 40... I think 41 is the last one that actually had Miura working on it. But yeah, so Berserk is not done. It has not ended with the creator's death, which is an interesting position to be in, especially considering how many mangaka do die before being able to complete work. For example, the mangaka of oh my gosh, what is that series called? Oh my gosh, I'm blanking right now. With the Light, Raising an Autistic Child, that series, as well as there's another one that oh my gosh, I can't remember, and who she died very suddenly, partway through a series, or shortly after completing a series. It's a rom-com from like ages and ages ago. And then obviously like the ongoing issue of mangaka health. Obviously Yoshihiro Togashi kind of comes to the forefront with that, and people have always made the comment of like, oh well, what happens if he does get just too sick to work or does die. Like, there's obviously the speculation that his wife, Naoka Takeuchi, will continue Hunter x Hunter, although who knows, right? Like, hopefully he doesn't die. That we don't want people to die. We don't want people to run themselves into the ground and risk their health so much so that their life ends, right? Like, no amount of art is worth that. But yeah, I haven't read this volume either, just because I've been very, very busy kind of finalizing my house before a friend is staying with me. So once I have some more free time, week after next, I will actually sit down and read some of these books that I haven't had a chance to get to yet. But yeah, Berserk is fantastically, famously popular. It doesn't really need me to campaign for it, because I'm sure most, if not all of you, are reading it probably, and if you're not, then you are definitely aware of what it is. It's just too much of a cultural juggernaut to not be something you are aware of. But yeah, Volume 12 of the deluxe edition. Volume 4 of I Think Our Son is Gay by Okura. This is a short ongoing series about a mother who has pretty strong suspicions that her oldest son is gay and is in love with his best friend, and her kind of muddling through being the best parent she can be and supporting him even if he isn't comfortable enough to be, open with her about his sexuality or his interests. It's a very sweet series. We've seen Okura's a manga from Okura before, in collaboration with another writer, I believe. No, an artist. But this is their first just them work that we've had in English. It's really sweet. Very skinny little books, as are most kind of Twitter or web comic releases. This might be a Pixiv one. I don't remember. Doesn't really matter. But if you like stories about especially allyship and supportive parents, then this is for you. It just always makes me, smile. Big grin. It's a sweet series and I recommend it. So we have volume 7 and 10 of Blue Period. Finally, my volume 7 came in, so I can finally continue reading the series. Fantastic manga about art and artistry and, just the culture of art and artists as well. And, how art is a self-expression. Really, really wonderful. Obviously 10 volumes in English. I think there's 12 in Japanese right now. So we've pretty much caught up. It's one of these series that just continues to get better and better. But I've been stalled at volume 6 for months now. So I already have volumes 8 and 9. But I just couldn't read them because I didn't have volume 7 yet. So now I do, and now I can, and I'm very looking forward to it. I'm going to do that over this coming weekend. It's one that just continues to get, just be really, really good. It has an anime, I haven't seen it. But well worth the read, especially if you yourself are an artist or you're interested in stories about the creation of art and the artistic process. It's really good. Really good. So we have Kamome Shirahama's Witch Hat Atelier Volume 10. Good catch, G. This is an ongoing fantasy manga about witches and magic, and a main character called Coco, who's only just now being brought into this magical society, and a lot of stuff going on. It's so good. Shirahama is a phenomenal creator. The series, as you can tell from the cover, has won an Eisner, and a Harvey Award. So it's well worth checking out if you haven't. It's honestly one of my favorite ongoing series. The art is beautiful as well. I'm sure if you haven't read this series, or if you're not aware of the series, you've probably seen some of the panels floating around prior to this. It is very, very good. I haven't actually read this particular volume because, again, I just got it the other day. But I cannot wait. Whenever there's a new volume of this, it's so good. Be sure to check out Witch Hat Atelier. It's one of my favorite manga currently, and just continues to be phenomenal. It hits the ground running from the very first volume and is just beyond brilliant. Welcome to the Ballroom by Tomo Takeuchi, a ballroom dance sports manga. I love this series. It was on hiatus for a long time. We had a very big gap between volumes 9 and 10. We finally kind of seen more recently a couple more volumes This also, just by the way, does have a matte cover like the previous volumes, except for volume 10. Volume 10 had a glossy cover. I still don't really understand why. But this is the story of a high school boy who starts ballroom dance after he kind of discovers it through the girl that he really likes, but very quickly fell in love with the sport and now is trying to get better. That the way that happens in sports manga. Obviously, this is more of a non-traditional sport, but this is a fantastic. Oh my gosh, the dance sequences and the sense of movement in this are amazing. The characters are great, and the portrayal of dance and like the dancers, the people who choose to become semi-professional dancers is really, really wonderful. As someone who has a little bit of background in ballroom dance, it's so fun to read, but also really portrays the athleticism of it, um, and kind of the competitive nature of this sport that I don't think a lot of people are inherently that aware of. It's not, the most typical sport you think of when you think of sports manga or sports stories in general. It's really, really good. Really, really good. And I encourage you to try it. I still haven't seen the anime. No, I'll get there one day. But it does have an anime adaptation. I can't speak to its quality, but I definitely recommend the manga. We have volume 8 of The King's Beast by Rei Toma. This, as I've said with previous volumes, is set in the same world as Dawn of the Arcana, another Toma work, and features Ajin, which is why I mention that. But they are standalone series. You don't have to have read one to enjoy the other. But I have read both. They're both good. This one I personally think is the strongest of Toma's works. I've read all of the stuff that we've seen released in English from her. This is by far my favorite. This is the story of a teenage girl, Ajin, who that's not her name. She is an Ajin, which are like a race of people who have animal kind of ears and various other elements to them, who are kind of treated as second-class citizens. But she is infiltrated the royal family as a bodyguard in order to find the person responsible for her twin brother's death in childhood. But with recent volumes, there's been some updates on that situation, but our main character isn't really aware of that. Well, she kind of is. She's also hiding her, that she is a girl, because girls are not allowed to be bodyguards or have any kind of rights at all within the society. So we have this bubbling romance between her and the prince that she has been assigned to. He doesn't know that she's a girl. A couple of the other aides do, but honestly, this bisexual king over here, he's just absolutely doesn't really have an issue with perhaps falling in love with a dude, which is great. So this is a little bit Mulan-esque. Beautiful, beautiful artwork. Again, I feel like this is probably the best of Rei Toma's works. Some fantastic character drawing, but just the richness of the setting as well is just so well done. I love the series. If you like kind of Eastern fantasy, then you should definitely check it out. It's really, really lovely and well worth the read. As I said, you don't have to have read Toma's other previous works to enjoy this one, but I do think that Dawn of the Arcana is good. The Water Dragon's Bride, or the Bride of the Water, whatever it is, her other one is standalone, and I did like that one. I do think that the other two are stronger, just for my tastes. They suit my interests more. But yeah, check this one out. So my release, oh my gosh, volume 27. We don't get these very often, but when we do, it's always a treat. This is an ongoing supernatural Iyashike by Yuki Midorikawa about a boy, Natsume Takashi, who inherits a book of friends from his late grandmother. He has the ability to see yokai, or spirits. And because of that, he's kind of he's been rejected throughout his life, seen as a problem child. He was orphaned at a very young age, and so up until this point, he's been bounced around different, adoptive or foster families, who never really had him stay very long because of his quote-unquote bad behavior, his reaction to seeing all of these, scary monsters and creatures that no one else could see. But at the beginning of the story, he has recently moved into a new foster home. Some very, very distant relatives of his father, who have brought him in, the Fujiwaras. Aww. And when he does so, he goes through the things that his grandmother has left. And through that, he discovers this book of friends, and he realizes that she was also able to see spirits in the same way that he does. Shenanigans happens. He's now returning all of the different names from these book of friends, and keeps getting pulled into various, supernatural issues. This is just such a sweet, lovely, down-to-earth, slice of life story, bittersweet, heartwarming, all at once. Natsume's yokai bodyguard, this fat cat here, Nyanko Sensei, is fabulous, and this is just such a fantastic series. I love the series. It's one that's had many seasons of anime and movies and all sorts of things. If you haven't tried it, this is one that really is, I think, worth reading, regardless of, it's suitable for all ages. It has real emotional heart to it. It's just it's the perfect Iyashike, really. It's very soothing, but also it does have that little underbalance of sadness, of heartbreak, of not only Natsume's relationship to yokai, but also with other people up until this point, and the many people that have hurt him over the years, but also, the slowly him kind of connecting with a grandmother he never met. It's really good. I've been a long time fan of Natsume. Anyone who's watched my channel for any length of time knows this. I highly recommend it, and check it out if you are so interested. So we have the penultimate volume of Ayakane's Requiem of the Rose King. This is a series complete in 17 volumes. This is volume 16. I haven't read this one because I've kind of banked up a couple of the last couple of volumes so I can read them all at once. Hopefully volume 17 shouldn't be too far down the schedule. It has been released in Japan, so I'm just waiting for that English release viz. But this is a fantastic historical drama, a Shakespearean reimagining of Richard III and Henry VI, both those plays, and then obviously the actual historical events that was the War of the Roses, with a twist, obviously. This is a series that also just recently got an anime. Haven't seen it, can attest to it. I know that some people, it didn't have the budget or the care that a lot of larger or more shonen oriented series have gotten. This is not a shonen, this is a shoujo, but considering the potential that like a dark political thriller could have, it is a little bit of a shame. Although this one is gender AF, so maybe that's why. I don't know. This is a fantastic series. Lots of drama, lots of high stakes and tragedy. And if you know anything about like the real life people, and also just the Shakespearean plays that this draws from, it's not a happy story, and I don't expect a happy ending, but I do expect fantastic storytelling. It's, for all that I've read up until this point, it's great, and I really recommend it. If you were disappointed by the anime, check out the manga because it is very, very good. Next, we have Volume 4 of In These Words by Guild Pleasure, Togakyu and Kichiku Neko. This is a ongoing doujin comic series about a psychiatrist who is brought in by the police to psychoanalyze a serial killer. But there may be more going on than initially expected. I've seen this series likened to like a very, Hannibal Lecter and Will Graham's type of relationship dynamic, which initially, yes, maybe that's the closest analog. I will say that very quickly that changes, and as I said, there's a lot more going on here. I love this series. I love this series a lot. This initially got an English release for the first volume by, I want to say, DMP ages ago. But now this duo is releasing the series on their own. They're self-publishing the series. You can read it in, I believe the original is in Chinese, Mandarin, or bilingual, so Mandarin and English. These are the collected English editions. And then there's various publications of this globally. So I think there's a Spanish version. I know there's a Japanese version, French, etc., etc. This is such a good series. Oh my god. So yeah, as mentioned, there is elements of a serial killer here and murder and those sorts of things. So be aware. There's a lot of sexual violence as well due to that. So just, make sure you know what you're getting into with this series. But, oh my gosh, this series is really, really good. And if you're not a fan of that, of that Hannibal style of, relationship, Hanagram, that's the word I'm looking for. I have never seen Hannibal, so I can't speak to it. But obviously very popular pairing. It's actually not that. As I said, that's sort of the initial presentation of the story and these characters. But it quite quickly becomes more apparent that there is actually a lot of different things going on. I really enjoy this one. It is darker themes, just generally as you would expect for this style of story. But if you're not weirded out or squicked out by that, then go for it, honestly. This is such a good time. There's also kind of side stories and like various spin-off novels and things like that that Guild Pleasure have put together and released. I'm not like, I haven't dived as deeply into all of that stuff just because one, I don't have time, two, I need to sit down and actually figure out how things coordinate with each other. They also have other various, original works that they put out. A lot of a lot of tropes and themes that aren't exactly what current fandom would deem acceptable. I know there's part of their releases, like part of their stories. I know they have an incest story. They've done like all sorts of things, which are I wouldn't say like push the envelope very much for self published works or like this kind of doujin. Not this one, but like they deal with dark themes, and like doujin has always been like kind of a wild west of whatever you want to do it. You will find your audience. But obviously, like nowadays the current fandom discourse is always like so puritanical, like, oh, this, you are a bad person if you enjoy anything in media that it could be deemed hurtful or wrong, which I just roll my eyes at, right? but if you are someone who doesn't subscribe to that, and you're not also worried about, well, just don't worry about other people's opinions, honestly. But if it sounds like your thing, you should check their broader scope of work out. But I do think that In These Words are maybe the best of their. I can't say that because I haven't read all of their works. But this is certainly their most popular work. It is definitely worth a read. And even if you like go into it with a little bit of hesitation just due to the themes of the work, because personally, like, I'm not really, I was more curious about this series because of like how long it's been around, how popular it does seem to be globally, and the fact that it had previously seen a partial release from DMP. Like, I was just curious about it. I'm not someone, I didn't buy it because like I was that interested in, the psychologist or psychiatrist and the serial killer like relationship dynamic. But now, having read it, yeah, I really enjoy this one. And as soon as I got this book, like literally as soon as I opened my mail to get to the book, I like sat down and read it that minute. It's very, very good, and one that I always highly anticipate. This collects like 4 or 5 chapters of the doujin. They do sell the single chapters by themselves as well, because they release them obviously and sell them at comic conventions and things. But I don't have any of those, obviously. This is probably the most convenient way to collect this series in the English print, if you are so inclined. But yeah, check out In These Words if it sounds like something you might be interested in. Next we have Only the Flower Knows Volume 2 by Rihito Takarai, same creator as 10 Count and various other things, the artist of 7 Days. Yeah, this is a story of 2 university students, PhD students maybe, who are just kind of drawn to each other and their eventual relationship, obviously. Like, there's obviously, this is, yeah, what a series that I read like ages ago. I don't remember if I read like scans of this or I read like the digital release of this from one of the publishers. This is honestly, I would say it was probably Scans because like it was that long ago. Um, it was one of the earlier BL releases that I had tried. I want to say that I got into it probably one. I was at. It's always been very popular within the BL community and this and scan circulation. So I would have tried it because of that, but I also probably would have tried it because of Takadai's work, 7 Days, which I believe I owned or had heard of or had read or whatever. Um, yeah, it's really interesting to see this like in print now, especially from June slash DMP. I'm always very hesitant whenever June gets a title because DMP is just such a mess. Like I don't know how they still exist as a company still. But regardless, it is nice to be getting a physical release of the series, even if I don't trust the publisher whatsoever. But like with Tokyo Pop, I'm not a hypocrite. If a publisher I don't like does license something that I do like, I will support that release. Even if like I disagree with their business practices or whatever, right? Um, Other people have their own take on that, and that's fantastic. For me, I will spend the money to own the thing that I like and enjoy, but I will grit my teeth when giving them money because I typically don't like to encourage bad behavior. But yeah, regardless, this is a really nice, sweet, um, you know, less messy series compared to a lot of the series that I've been talking about, but also compared to Takurai's other prominent BL, 10 count. So yeah, check it out if you haven't. It's pretty good. So we have the light novel version of Though I Am an Inept Villainess, um, aka Tale of the Butterfly Rat Body Swap in the Maiden Court by Sasaki Nakamura and illustrations by Kano Yuki. This is a Airship slash Seven Seas release. I didn't really know anything about this series until I saw the translator or the letterer, someone who is in the production of this story, um, talk about it. And I was quite, like, it piqued my interest. I wanted to try it. I've read this one. It's fun. It's a fun time. It's not an isekai. It is, as the title said, the butterfly rat body swap in the Maiden Court. So this is kind of an Eastern low fantasy setting about, and there's a whole bunch of like geopolitical structure happening here. There's a whole bunch of rival clans, and each of them has presented a maiden for the young prince, like the to be emperor. They're kind of vying for his attention. And there's a very obvious favorite who is like very close with this young prince, and they've been close for a very long time. And like he is absolutely besotted by her, just is 100% like absolutely gonna choose this girl to marry. And then there's like a very obvious and she's called the butterfly or the princess butterfly or whatever. And then we have just the most unpopular young maiden in this court. She's regarded as a rat. She's very, she doesn't come from the same background as all of these other young maidens. There's 5 of them altogether, just by the way. And she doesn't have any like training. She's also quite crude and selfish and jealous and all of these things, right? So on the evening of some festival or something that they're all having, this rat of the maiden court, she pushes the Princess Butterfly from the like balustrade, from the balcony, um, and so ends up, getting arrested for like attempted murder. Right. This other girl doesn't die, but we find out that actually the personality, this girl, the butterfly of the court, the princess butterfly, she wakes up in the body of this other girl who's just like is hated just across the board. Nobody likes her, which is done by this other girl because she wants to be in the prince's favor, and she wants just the easier life that she thinks that this other girl has, and blah blah blah. But what she doesn't realize is that our main character, this Princess Butterfly, she's so happy because now she's in a able body. Up until this point, she was very, very sickly. Her entire focus was on, her health and maintaining her health and building strength. And she's a very strong-willed character. She's, I would say, like a little bit like Katarina Claes from Baccarina, in that she's like really interested in, physical activity, gardening, well, not gardening, farming. She's finally in this healthy body able to do like all of these things that she didn't have the time for. She could eat whatever she wanted. She didn't have to be hyper fixated on her health and maintaining her health, because up until this point she would like fall into fever pretty much every day. Nausea was a constant. She was just not well. She hasn't been well her whole life, and she's not well. And like, okay, on one hand, this girl is like such a Mary Sue because she's just like excels at everything. She's really good with animals. She's very she can do everything really well. All of the maidenly duties that are expected. But I will argue that she's not actually Mary Sue, because part of the point is that she works so hard through her sickness to gain strength and to be able to excel in those things. So like she's not just perfect because like she's the main character. She has worked for it, but it is kind of funny. And then obviously like this other girl who was super jealous and is now in the Cohen's body, this Princess Butterfly body. She thought she was going to be sitting pretty and like living a cruisy lifestyle, beloved by everyone, but she realizes very, very quickly that like, oh my gosh, wow, like this girl is sick, and like how can she do anything? And all of her, like all of the ladies in waiting or whatever, handmaids, are also like, they're very protective of her and like coddle her, but also they know the personality of this maiden, and they know that she's not like a wimp, basically. Like they know that she will work hard, physically work hard, every day, and just continues to build strength even through the sickness. So even though this other girl wants to rest and like get healthy, which is an impossibility because that's just never gonna happen. All of her like most trusted aides or whatever are like, oh yeah, like this is the perfect time for you to be doing all these things, practicing your calligraphy and practicing your musical instrument and doing like 1,000 reps of whatever. And she's like, oh my god, what is going on? Meanwhile, also being just like racked with sickness because she doesn't know any of the medical stuff that this girl has developed over the years. It's an interesting and quirky little story. I do enjoy it. It was a fun time. It'll be interesting to see how this continues to play out because we have at the end of this volume like one of the characters realizing that there's been a swap, because that's the other thing, is that because of the magic involved or whatever, the girl, like the actual butterfly, isn't able to verbalize that or tell anyone. But obviously someone figures it out because they know the realities of like this girl's personality, and they have changed. Both of them have changed so dramatically that like it's hand waved a little bit because it's like, oh well, she's really sick and she survived this this attempt on her life and blah blah blah. It's like, and of course this other girl is gonna be a liar. Like her whole time here she's told nothing but lies, and we know that she's a horrible person and whatever. I know this has a manga adaptation as well, also from Seven Seas. I haven't tried it. I don't know how good it is, but I did like this first novel. It was a fun time, and I don't know if this has an anime planned, but I would think that it's a good choice for an anime. It's I think it would appeal to a lot of people, and it's just fun and funny. And if you like kind of villainous stories, but you're tired of the like, I was isekai'd into my favorite, dating sim as the villainess, or like I was even like the reborn as myself, or like time loop, like given a second chance stories. If you're tired of those, maybe try the body swap one, because it's a good time, and I do think it's worth reading. Reality to be living in when we have a new Spice and Wolf volume. Oh my goodness, this is volume 23, Spring Log 6 by Isuna Hasakura. This is another short story collection about Lawrence and Holo, set after the events of the finale, which was volume 17. So obviously we've had 6 of these short story collections. But more recently, with this volume and the previous volume, we've had Lawrence and Holo out adventuring again, or traveling, I should say, not adventuring, traveling, which is really nice. Kind of a return to form. But I personally haven't read this one yet because I just got it like 2 days ago. But yeah, I always look forward to more Spice and Wolf. It's interesting to see Hasakura return to these characters. Not that I think he ever left them, but seeing a series be completed, and then 10 years down the line, not only having a spin-off with the second generation, but also bringing back these beloved characters. I mean, he certainly tapped into a very excited and willing market with these short story collections. Is it as good as the original Spice and Wolf? I don't know. Maybe, probably. But I do think it is nice to be continuing with these characters. Yeah, I mean, what else can I say? Spice and Wolf is a classic. It's one of the light novels I would recommend to like people who've never tried a light novel before. It's not it doesn't have as many hang-ups as like a lot of the current isekai and popular light novels do right now. I think it has broader appeal, and although it's kind of a quote-unquote boring topic, I do think that the historical and economic focus is really fun to read, and the relationship dynamic between these two characters is always a good time. Their banter is brilliant. So yeah, check it out. I'm sure most people are aware. It has a two. So okay, Spice and Wolf has a 2-season anime adaptation, but it's also getting a new anime. I don't know if it's been confirmed whether it's a continuation or if it's a reboot. If it's a reboot, that would be fine. I think there's a lot to that can be done with that. Oh my gosh, a complete adaptation would never happen because it's so super duper long. But if it's a continuation, then my boy will finally be in the anime. Um, but regardless, I will probably be watching it when and if that ever happens. So yeah, Spice and Wolf, check it out. Here we have some Danmai. First is Ryobao Buchiro, or Meat Buns, the husky and his white cat Shizun, or Urha. I haven't read this yet. I haven't. I know this is one that like people are like, read the trigger warning, the content warnings for, because it is full on. Danmai is always full on, but I think this one, people really are very, fans are very proactive about warning readers, because, you know, not everyone's going to enjoy the things that are part of the story. And I like, for me, you know, we know that I don't really have an issue with anything. I'll read pretty much whatever, and nothing truly weirds me out so much so that like I personally can't handle. But obviously it is really good to have that for people who may go in blind. Don't go in blind to Danmai ever, but like, you know, it is worth being aware. This is the first of 7 Seasons non-MXTX releases for Danmai. They have licensed a whole slate of, you know, non-MXTX stuff. They've now gotten all of Meat Bun stuff, and someone else as well. Now I can't remember. They're I don't want to say constantly licensing Danmai. They aren't, but it is nice to see more and more of these very prominent popular series getting released by them. And I think also they've had to fight this learning curve of like a very protective fandom and community, balancing, you know, these extremely high expectations of people who, similarly to manga fans, are like quite unreasonable sometimes as to like what is possible. I do think it's really cool that they've continued to commission fan artists for covers and internal artwork. I do think that's a really great thing. I know that there's been like a lot of controversy and discourse about the use of fan translators. I think a lot of people were very excited and happy about it when it was first announced with the MXTX releases, but I think the actual execution of that has made it clear that like there's a reason some people are fan translators versus like those who have made the jump to professional translation. And I think I don't want to say it's nice, but like I think that might be a bit of a wake up call for some fans who are like very adamant that there had to be only like one kind of person working on the series. I don't know. That's again conjecture. But that has been a shift in sentiment that I've seen from the community over the last year or 2 years that we've been getting these Danmai releases. Regardless, I've been buying them all. I look forward to reading this one because I do want to expand my Danmai horizons. I don't read like the fan translations or the machine translations of any. I have enough to read as it is, so like I don't have time to to hunt down a 5,000 or 10,000 page fan translation of a Danmai. I just don't have that time. But I do have the time to sit down with like an actual physical book and take my time reading it and enjoying it. I just don't have the energy to stay up all night and binge like 1,000 pages of whatever. That's not me anymore. I'm not that person. But yeah, I do look forward to this one. It's very popular. And yeah, I mean, Meat Bun is a very popular creator as well, so it is nice that we are getting more of her works. And yeah, I will at some point sit down and read this first volume of The Husky and His White Cat Shizun. And probably like, I don't know. I've heard various things about this series, but I'll probably enjoy it regardless. I guess we'll find out. But certainly not least, speaking of MXTX, we have the final volume of the Scum Villains Self-Saving System. This is volume 4. It's a short story collection. Volume 3 was the end of like the actual story. This is a bunch of, short stories as you can imagine. Obviously pertaining to these characters. I haven't read this one, but I know for a fact this was the one with all of the sex in it. Typically, these short story collections are more smutty than otherwise. I mean, obviously they have other things that they're doing, but having read the chapter list in the front of the book and seeing that it contains web novel, chapter 89 or whatever. You know that's gonna be sex, because otherwise, if it wasn't included, the reason they mention that it's included is to acknowledge to fans that like, yes, this is uncensored. You're gonna have your gay sex in this. Obviously because any queer media, but especially gay media in China is illegal and it gets censored pretty rigorously. So it is just to signal to fans that yes, you have the sex. This sex is included. As I said, I haven't read this one. I don't really. I see fans chatting about like different things that happen, but I don't really have any clue as to what is and isn't in this. Although, I mean, again, memes down my community. I'm like not even proactively in it, but I do follow quite a few like artists, and then I just get exposed to various things because of inside jokes and memes and whatever. But yeah, this is probably MXTX's. Well, this is MXTX's least popular series out of the 3. I still really enjoy it. Like, I think it's a fun breakdown of not only stallion novels, but just like Danmai as well. I think it's really cleverly done. I think, and also because it has such an unreliable narrator, there's a lot of fun you can get from rereading. And as a fan, you can like the amount of stuff that's like, oh my god, why do you say it like this? Oh my god. Again, the unreliable narrator really means that by the end you have to completely recontextualize pretty much everything, just because you're like, this dude he's not good at talking about these things, and he just continues to lie because he's dumb. But like, also, I can understand why this is the least popular of her titles, because the relationship dynamic is not as inherently like, it's problematic. It's problematic, to put it mildly, compared to Wei Wuxian and Lan Zhan or Chang and Xiaolin from her other two series. These two are, they got some stuff going on. Which obviously means that people are going to be more critical of it just anyway, inherently. You know, that is the way of the world, unfortunately. I think it's a fun time. It's legitimately really funny. Like, I laugh a lot at this series, and it's clever. It's a good time. I can understand why this kind of launched her career as a Danmai writer, and you can see her growth as a writer across the three series as well. But yeah, just two little freaks kind of getting their freak on. That's what this book is. Everything that I got for this month. Oh my gosh, so many books. But thanks so much for watching, guys. Let me know your thoughts, feelings, opinions on any of these titles that I spoke about today. There was a lot of debuts, a couple completions, which is always nice. Like, it's nice to have some things ending amidst all of these, like, new series coming out. Not that I'm gonna complain about that either, but I do like when a story finishes. We know this. But yeah, for all of these series, hopefully you'll try them, or even if you disagree, you understand my take on them. But yeah, up until this, we've had a recent episode of Read Right to Left come out this week. That was a series spotlight on Descending Stories. One of my favorite series. I don't know why I blanked out there for a second. So that is available both on this channel as well as across all podcasting platforms. You can follow me on Twitter at GWE_reads. Although, of course, we don't know what the future of Twitter is. I kind of refuse to get anything else right now, though, until I know kind of what the whole situation is, because I just can't. First of all, I'm not going to Instagram. Like, I just don't understand that platform. And Tumblr, I feel like, has moved on past anything that I understand. And I don't have maybe the capacity to learn a new social media. So we'll figure it out if and when that happens. But hey, Twitter's not dead yet. So if you're wanting to follow me there, as I said, you can find that link down below. Otherwise, yeah, I'll catch you in the next video, guys. Bye till then.